Hello and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing one of the most popular horror series on Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House. This chilling and suspenseful show has captivated audiences around the world, leaving many wondering what happens next. The show is based on the novel of the same name by Shirley Jackson and follows the story of the Crain family as they navigate the haunted Hill House. In this video, we'll be diving deep into the plot, characters, and themes of the show, analyzing some of the most terrifying moments, and discussing what made this series so captivating for fans of the horror genre. So, if you're a fan of the show, or just curious about what makes The Haunting of Hill House so hauntingly good, then you're in the right place. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our latest videos. Let's get started. The Haunting of Hill House is a novel written by Shirley Jackson in 1959. It tells the story of four people who gather in a mansion called Hill House, where they plan to investigate the supernatural phenomena that have been reported in the house over the years. The group includes four members. Dr. Montague, who is a scholar of the paranormal and has dedicated his life to studying supernatural phenomena. Dr. Montague is the one who invites Eleanor Vance, Theodora, and Luke Sanderson to Hill House to assist him in his investigation. Dr. Montague is portrayed as a learned and rational man, who seeks to approach the investigation of Hill House in a scientific manner. He believes that by gathering a group of people with different skills and experiences, he can uncover evidence of supernatural activity in the house. Throughout the novel, Dr. Montague serves as a voice of reason and skepticism. He tries to keep the group focused on their investigation, even as they become increasingly affected by the strange events in the house. He is also a sympathetic and caring figure, who is genuinely concerned for the well-being of the other characters. Dr. Montague's character represents the tension between science and the supernatural. He believes in the power of empirical evidence and logical deduction, but he is also open to the possibility that there may be forces at work that cannot be explained by science. His presence in the novel adds depth and complexity to the exploration of the paranormal and the nature of reality. Eleanor Vance, who has experienced poltergeist activity in her own home, who is a 32-year-old woman who has spent most of her adult life caring for her invalid mother, who has recently passed away. She has never been married and has no children, and she feels trapped and unfulfilled in her mundane life. Eleanor is invited to stay at Hill House by Dr. Montague, who is conducting a study of paranormal activity. Eleanor eagerly accepts the invitation, hoping that the experience will give her a chance to escape from her lonely existence and start a new life. Eleanor is a complex character who is often portrayed as vulnerable and emotionally fragile. She is haunted by memories of her troubled childhood and is prone to intense feelings of guilt and self-doubt. Despite this, she is also curious and open-minded, and she quickly becomes invested in the investigation of Hill House's supernatural phenomena. As the story progresses, Eleanor becomes increasingly affected by the strange events in the house. She begins to feel as though the house is trying to communicate with her, and she becomes obsessed with the idea that she is meant to stay at Hill House forever. Her mental state deteriorates, and she becomes increasingly unstable and unpredictable, making her fellow investigators uneasy. Eleanor's character is a central part of the novel's exploration of the supernatural and psychological horror. Her experiences at Hill House raise questions about the nature of reality, perception, and the human psyche, and her ultimate fate is one of the novel's most haunting and ambiguous elements. Theodora, who has psychic abilities, which Dr. Montague believes will be useful in their investigation of Hill House. Theodora is initially portrayed as confident and self-assured, with a sharp wit and a flair for fashion. She is a foil to Eleanor's meek and introverted personality, and the two become close friends over the course of the novel. Theodora's psychic abilities are an important element of the novel's exploration of the supernatural. She is able to sense things that the other characters cannot, and she is often the first to notice when something is amiss in the house. Her ability to read people's thoughts and emotions also makes her a valuable asset in deciphering the mysteries of Hill House. Despite her psychic gifts, Theodora is also a complex and flawed character. She is prone to outbursts of anger and can be manipulative and cruel at times. Her behavior towards Eleanor, in particular, is often ambiguous, and there is a sense that she may be using her friend for her own purposes. Theodora's character adds depth and nuance to the novel's exploration of the supernatural and the human psyche. She represents the power of intuition and the mystery of the unknown, as well as the darker side of human nature. Luke Sanderson, who is the heir to the property of Hill House, and he joins Dr. Montague's investigation of the paranormal activity in the house. Luke is portrayed as a charming and charismatic figure, with a carefree attitude and a quick wit. He is initially skeptical of the supernatural claims surrounding Hill House, but he agrees to help Dr. Montague in the hopes of proving that there is no truth to the rumors. As the story progresses, Luke becomes increasingly affected by the strange events in the house. He begins to experience nightmares and visions, and his skepticism gives way to fear and anxiety. Despite this, he remains a rational and level-headed character, often serving as a voice of reason in the group. Luke's character adds an element of practicality and realism to the novel's exploration of the supernatural. He represents the skeptical and scientific viewpoint, and his experiences in the house raise questions about the nature of reality and the limitations of human perception. Luke is also a complex and flawed character, with a history of gambling and dishonesty. His character arc involves a struggle to overcome his own demons and to come to terms with his responsibilities as the heir to Hill House. His relationship with the other characters, particularly Eleanor, is also an important element of the novel's exploration of human relationships and the power of personal connections. Eleanor arrives at Hill House first. An instinct tells her to leave, but she stays and meets the house's caretakers, Mr. and Mrs. Dudley. They are unwelcoming and urge her to go away, saying that they refuse to stay at the house after dark. Theodora arrives next, and Eleanor, a recluse, feels immediately drawn to Theodora's warm, witty, and open personality. Eleanor lies and tells Theodora she has an apartment back home, when she actually lives at her sister's house, where she sleeps on a cot. Eleanor was her mother's primary caretaker up until her mother's death a few months prior. She is just beginning to explore her freedom and is elated to have found a new friend. Dr. Montague and Luke arrive next. Dr. Montague reluctantly tells the group about the house's history after dinner. He doesn't want to scare anyone into leaving, since the last tenant to leave at night died when his horse crushed him against the oak tree in the driveway. Dr. Montague explains that the house was built 80 years ago by a man named Crain. Crain designed Hill House as a series of cloistered, maze-like concentric circles that are almost impossible to navigate. Tragically, Crain's wife never set foot into the house. She died when her carriage overturned in the driveway. Bitter and depressed, Crain stayed to raise his 2 daughters in the house. Over the years, the daughters fought over ownership of the house, and the house eventually landed in the hands of the older sister's caretaker, a young woman from town. Taunted and harassed by the younger sister and the townspeople, the young woman hanged herself, reportedly in the house's turret. Over the first week of their stay, the group experiences a series of unexplainable events. One night, the women hear a loud banging on the door and feel a chilling breeze. The men see a mysterious animal run down the hallway. Outside the nursery, they discover a mysterious cold spot. Inside the library, Eleanor detects an awful odor. Finally, Luke discovers the words "Help Eleanor come home" written in chalk in the halls. With each event, the group grows more suspicious of Eleanor, and Eleanor is terrified by the thought that the house is singling her out. The odd events continue. When Theodora finds the words "Help Eleanor come home Eleanor" written in blood on her walls, she lashes out at Eleanor, who she suspects is doing these things to get attention. Meanwhile, Eleanor feels herself losing grasp of her senses and at the same time becoming more connected to Theodora. At one point, Dr. Montague assures everyone that ghosts can't cause them physical harm. Only fear can do that. Still, Theodora and Eleanor continue to experience strange events that are hard to recall yet hard to deny. Mrs. Montague, a parapsychologist, arrives at Hill House with her friend, Arthur. Belittling her husband and his lack of progress, she confidently declares that she will draw out Hill House's spirits. Mrs. Montague believes that spirits feel lonely and want to connect, but they need to be coaxed into communicating. To accomplish this, she uses a device called a planchette. Mrs. Montague reports that a spirit named Nell spoke to her, saying it wanted to go home. The group, deeply disturbed, continues to watch Eleanor with suspicion while growing more fearful of the house. That night, Dr. Montague, Luke, Theodora, and Eleanor stay in a room together to keep watch. They hear terrible banging sounds on the door while Mrs. Montague and Arthur sleep in nearby rooms, undisturbed. Eleanor realizes that she can hear any sound that occurs inside the house, no matter which room she is in. She believes that she is merging with the house and can sense things that the others can't. Eleanor wakes up one night and goes to the library, aware that she's not acting entirely of her own volition. She hears a voice that sounds like her mother's and chases it throughout the house. Trying to avoid the others, who now realize that she's roaming the house alone, Eleanor retreats back to the library and climbs a rickety iron stairway to the turret. The others gather underneath it and worry that the stairway will collapse, but Luke climbs up and ushers Eleanor back down to safety. The next morning, the group agrees that Eleanor must leave Hill House. Eleanor cries and says she has nowhere to go, claiming that Hill House is now her home. Dr. Montague, worried for Eleanor's sanity, says she must leave at once. Eleanor finally agrees, and the group watches as she begins to drive down the driveway. As she departs, however, Eleanor pities the group for believing that they can thwart Hill House's desire to keep her. She believes that she belongs to the house. She accelerates toward the oak tree, and right before she crashes and dies, she wonders why she is doing this and why no one is stopping her. After Eleanor's suicide, the group leaves Hill House. Dr. Montague later publishes his study, but his colleagues ridicule his findings. The climax of the novel takes place during a night of intense supernatural activity, during which Eleanor becomes increasingly unstable and the group becomes divided. In the aftermath, the characters are forced to confront the reality of what they have experienced and the implications it has for their own understanding of the world. In the end, the characters go their separate ways, but the memory of their experiences at Hill House haunts them all. The novel ends with a haunting and ambiguous final sentence that leaves the reader with more questions than answers. Overall, The Haunting of Hill House is a chilling and thought-provoking exploration of the supernatural, human psychology, and the limits of human understanding. Shirley Jackson's masterful prose and her ability to create a sense of foreboding and unease make this novel a true classic of the horror genre.